Hello and welcome to this screencast on GCSE psychology. So today we're going to have a look to see what psychology is. We're going to hopefully explore what kind of things we study in psychology, and hopefully you will leave this screencast knowing whether or not psychology is an option that interests you. So first of all, psychology, it's obviously a brand new subject for us all. It's not something we offer at Key Stage 3. Some of you might already have an idea of what psychology is. If you do, that's great. But what it is it's a study that looks at why people and animals behave as they do. So psychologists are people that study human behaviour. They want to look at why humans behave in the way they do. Now, I think of it as people who are a little bit nosy about interesting things that people do and trying to explain why that is. What we're going to look at today is we're going to have a look at the topics that we study in GCSE psychology, and we're also going to have a look at how the course will work. So hopefully you will leave this with a little bit more information about the subject. So first of all, we're going to look at what kind of things do we study. So I'm going to start off with Year 10 psychology. So this is what you will study in your first year of the GCSE. So on the screen there, you can see 4 different main topics. We've got memory, perception, development and research methods. And in those topics, I've put some questions that we tried to answer in these topics. So for example, let's look at memory. So, I don't know, but can you remember exactly what I said at the beginning of this screencast? I can't even remember, I don't think, what I said at the beginning of this screencast. But the memory topic looks at why do we forget things, but why do we remember certain things? Are there different types of memories, and how are they stored in our minds? The next topic, I'm going to move along to perception there. So we're looking at these questions, what factors affect our perception? So if you're staring at those circles there, I'm staring at them now and they do look like they're moving. They're actually not, but we're looking at how can we explain these visual illusions and what theories are there of perception. Moving down to the green box there, you can see development. So how do our brains develop? What impact does learning have on them? And how do we actually learn? So we look at for example, you now know a lot more than you did when you were, for example, 1 year old, 7-year-old, etc., etc. So how do we learn? And how do our brains develop in this time? And then we look at research methods, really, really important topic. How do psychologists actually conduct their research? So we look at lots of different research methods. For example, you might do some questionnaires, you might do some interviews, you might have a look at how experiments are carried out, you'll have a look at some of the most famous experiments at psychology, and we look at that topic of research methods. So that's Year 10 and what we cover in Year 10. That's obviously a very brief overview with some key questions there for us to consider. And then looking at Year 11 psychology. So starting off with social influence. So what makes us conform or obey? So for example, why is it that we are probably more likely to obey a teacher or perhaps a police officer if they tell us what to do? Why and how can we explain that? Also, why do some people step in to help others in need? For example, if someone was falling over outside, why would some people step in and some people wouldn't? That's another topic we look at, social influence. Moving across to language, thought and communication, we're looking at how do humans and animals communicate. So animals are amazing and have this incredible communication as well. For example, there's a famous study that shows that bees can communicate where the food is, and that's an example of one topic we look at there. We also look at the idea of body language, non-verbal communication, gestures, all of those things, and how language actually develops. So that's under the language, thought, communication topic. We also have brain and neuropsychology. This is my favourite topic, and we look at the structure of the nervous system. We look at the incredible brain, how it's structured, what the different areas are called. For example, there's a part of your brain that may be responsible for your movement, a part of your brain that may be responsible for your decision making, and what happens if we damage one of those parts of the brain, and how we can look at studying the brain. And then we also look at psychological problems. So we ask the question, what is mental health? What is an addiction and how can we treat an addiction? How can we explain depression and how can we treat depression? So these are all topics we look at within psychology, and if you're interested in these topics, this is going to be a really, really good subject for you. So it's very important, I think, that we understand kind of what psychology is, and I've kind of given you a definition, we've spoke about it, but it's a very, very broad subject, okay? So in one lesson you might look at why we forget certain memories, in another lesson you could be looking at why people suffer from mental illnesses such as depression. It's also important to note that it's important that you understand that there are writing and numeracy skills in psychology, and there's lots of subjects that go with psychology, for example history, English, because you are required to answer some 9-mark questions, not that long, but a little bit of literacy skills is good there, and also looking at a little bit of math skills. As it's a broad topic, psychology, it complements many subjects, and it's a really, really interesting one, and it's nice that it's something different for you, that you haven't studied it before. So you can see on the left hand side of the screen that there are the 2 papers that you will sit. So if you want to know how you're going to be assessed, it's an exam based course. You will sit 2 exams at the end of year 11, and each exam counts for 50% of your GCSE. Each of the exams will cover the topics we've spoken about here. So for example, in paper 1 you have memory, research methods, perception and development. In paper 2 you have social influence, language, thought and communication, brain and neuropsychology and psychological problems. They are really interesting topics, they're new to you and they are fascinating to study. I know I'm biased because I'm a teacher of it, but it's really nice for you to find something new to study at GCSE. So, what about if you want to know more information? I don't want to keep you on this screencast for too long. I can imagine you probably have loads to watch when you're making an important decision of what you want to do for your GCSE options. But of course you can email any of the psychology teachers in the department. For example, Mr. Wotton, who is head of psychology, I've put his initials there on the screen, and you can add obviously the @Northgate, as you probably have been emailing a lot of your teachers anyway at this time. So Mr. Wotton, Mrs. Willis, Mrs. Pope and I'm Miss Bridges. Feel free to email any of us with any questions that you have, and we would love to have you as part of the psychology team at Northgate. So any questions, feel free to email us. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope that you've learnt a little bit more about psychology from this screencast. Take care of yourselves.